Hello, welcome to the Ensemble Classical Music Improvisation channel. I am Robert, and this is video number 2 in a little series in which we're looking at Bach's cello Prelude in G major, the famous one which is in all the movies, and how we can learn to improvise from it. So first, let's just very quickly recap what we did in the first video. We had a look at the different notes that are in the G major chord. Then we added some rhythms to this idea, so that wasn't just randomly wandering around. And to get inspired for those rhythms, we also had to think about maybe a specific character or a form, like a dance or a scherzo. Then we organized those rhythms in some larger chunks, in other words, in a meter. And finally, on top of that, we could add phrasing. And I always love thinking and working with phrasing because phrasing helps you to kind of improvise little chunks that are one entity together and really give the listener a kind of sense of like, I'm listening to this part, now I'm listening to this part. And one great way to approach this is the question and answer approach. So, what's new in this video? In this video, we're going to look at the so-called dominant, or the 5th degree in our scale. If you already know what that's about, you can just skip this part. Otherwise, I'm going to explain a little bit what is this dominant and how can you find it especially. So it's not that important in a way to really go very deeply into it. We hear the dominant, which is a chord which is built on the 5th degree in a scale. We hear that dominant as a very strong chord pulling towards the tonic. And it's used in all music from the 17th century onwards, and still also in pop music. We get that very strong chord connection. So that's why we'll look at it now. And Bach also uses it a lot. So, which notes are this so-called dominant and how can you find it? So far we've worked with our tonic. So in G major, that's just the 1st, 3rd and 5th note of the scale. And I've written down here the different notes and which scale degree they are, so which scale number they have. So you can see when we find this tonic, this chord, this triad, we always skip one note. We have the G, we skip one note, then the B, we skip one note, and then the D. We can do the same starting on the D. We skip a note, we get the F sharp. Then we have the G again, so we could go back here, and we skip that note. And the next note again is the A. So we have the D, the F sharp, and the A. And those together make this chord on the dominant, which is written out here. And this is the same for any key. If you want to practice a bit more with the basics of finding scale degrees, intervals and chords, go to this series. And so now it's nice to have a little bit of practice, just going back and forth without any meter or rhythm really. Just find the notes G, B, D, and then find the notes D, F sharp, A. Of course, as you can see, the D is a common note. That's always nice to know. If you want some more videos to do with this chord combination, you can look here, especially the Pachelbel ones should be interesting because there's a little jam session, just going back and forth. So far we've practiced just a bar of a dominant, a bar of a tonic, and just going back and forth in regularity. But in real music, this will sometimes change. So here's an example. We have a bar, tonic, bar dominant, bar tonic, bar dominant. But here we have half a bar of the tonic, half a bar of the dominant, and we finish with the tonic. And so you can see that in a way, this changing, the rhythm of the changing, or what we call the harmonic rhythm, is getting faster. So for bar, 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 half bar, and the end. So that's a way to kind of speed up the feel of the music. So let's have a little look at Bach's cello Prelude in G major, our shining light, our example. So I've taken all the bits here that have this tonic-dominant relationship, and again in dark purple is the dominant. You might, if you know this piece, you might notice that I've changed some of the notes. I've transposed them. So the note relationships are still all the same, but sometimes Bach will go to D major, for instance, so he'll modulate and then use the A major dominant. So just for clarity, and if this concept is all new to you, I just changed everything to G major so you can really compare how that happens. One way to compare this is the harmonic rhythm we just spoke about. So here we can see one bar of dominant, one bar of tonic, one bar, one bar, one bar, one bar. Here it's quite a bit longer, almost, well, 3 bars and then half a bar. Or you could also think of this as an idea, half a bar, like we saw in the previous slide. Another idea is to make it super long, as we see in Bach's ending of his Prelude. It's about 11 bars of just the dominant and then just 1 bar of a tonic. So it doesn't always have to be even or even remotely even for that matter. Another interesting aspect is that for the dominant we've also here the C. So far we only spoke about the D, F sharp and A, but if we add 1 more third, it would be the C, and that just gives it, that dominant chord, that extra strong flavor of really wanting to go back to G major or to the tonic. So an important aspect of preluding and of improvisation in general is motif. And there are 3 types of motifs, or maybe more, but in any case we will look at 3 different types. A rhythmical motif, a melodic motif and a harmonic motif. Bach uses all these motifs but not really rhythm, because the whole piece keeps on going in 16th notes perpetually, so we can't really call that a motif because it just keeps on going sort of in the same way. Rhythmical motif, in my opinion, is the easiest way to start with motifs, because you don't really have to think about anything except for that rhythm, so everything else can change completely. So let's have a look at how we could do this. We could have a motif of 1 bar, as here, and not really think about the rest. Of course, in this case, I have a tonic for 3 bars, so I don't also have to think too much about changing that. The rhythm stays the same, and then when we arrive at the end of our phrase, it's just a long note or a longer note, which is always a great way to indicate the end of a phrase. Other than the rhythm, I didn't keep much the same. So here we have a repeated note going up. Here we have not a repeated note going down, more jagged. Here we have the repeated note but jumping this octave first and then a third down, whereas before it was always a third up. So melodically, not really a motive. Harmonically, it just stays the same, so also not really, just the rhythm. But already like that, I think you feel some kind of cohesion happening here. Here we have a 2-bar motif, which is organized in 1 bar tonic and 1 bar dominant. This 2-bar motif is then organized as a sort of question-answer. We get a little answer, not very clear. I ask the same question, and then I get a more definitive answer. Finally, a little glimpse into the future, when we're going to talk more also about how to develop a motif. So here we have a motif of 1 bar again, but it kind of has 2 ideas inside of it. This offbeat start, pam pam pam, and then we have this idea of a dotted rhythm, tiam pa pam. Again, we're staying in 1 harmony all the way through, this time the dominant. But after we've built up the 1 bar, here I will only take the second part of this motif and develop that a little bit. Here we also use that C that we spoke about Bach using with the extra pull to the B of the G major chord, and here we finally have our answer. For now, thanks so much for watching. like, share, subscribe, and see you for the next one next week.